On October 14, 1943, at 15,000 feet above the skies of Schweinfurt, Germany, a German pilot recorded in his logbook with precise, cold penmanship, 17th bomber destroyed. The entry noted a B-17 Flying Fortress twisting down to the ground, leaving behind a dark plume of smoke and fading hopes. Through the cockpit canopy of his Focke-Wulf FW-190, the German pilot watched the remaining bombers struggle to maintain formation as American gunners fired 50-caliber rounds into empty airspace where German fighters had appeared only seconds before. In aerial combat, the calculations were simple but ruthless. With skill and experience, German pilots could choose the moment of attack, approach from the sun to blind bomber gunners, fire at the cockpit and engines, and retreat before the bombers' guns could respond. Unguarded B-17s were lucrative but easy targets. That day, 291 B-17s penetrated German airspace, aiming to destroy ball-bearing factories in Schweinfurt. By sunset, 60 would never return to England, and 17 more would be so heavily damaged they were recorded as lost upon landing. German pilots called it a chicken dinner, an easy slaughter. Americans called it Black Thursday, the darkest day in the history of the 8th Air Force. Neither side realized that this seemingly solid victory would be one of the last moments they could feel confident. Within 4 months, everything would change. By the end of 1943, German pilots had reason to be confident. Figures like Major Wilhelm Ferdinand Galland, brother of the famous pilot Adolf Galland, and Major Walter Dahl had turned intercepting American bombers into a science. They developed specialized tactics, exploited weaknesses in bomber formations, and honed their skills through months of successful combat. The American combat formation, or combat box, consisted of 18 to 21 B-17s arranged in 3 dimensions to mutually cover each other with defensive fire. Each B-17 was equipped with up to 13 50-caliber machine guns, theoretically able to cover every approach. In practice, German pilots identified deadly blind spots. The nose section was almost unprotected, ammunition was limited, and the psychological pressure of constant attack took its toll. A hallmark tactic was the head-on attack. Headman Heinz Koka, commander of 5JG-11, perfected attacking directly from the front, the B-17's weakest point. On February 26, 1943, he downed his first B-24 Liberator, Maisie, and by October, the total had risen to 17. His attacks were timed to the second, approach from 12:00 clock high, dive through the bomber formation at 400 mph, fire a 2-round burst into the cockpit and engines, then withdraw before defensive guns could respond. The statistics reinforced German pilots' confidence. During the first Schweinfurt raid on August 17, 1943, the Luftwaffe shot down 60 bombers, 16% of the attacking force. The heavy losses forced deep penetration raids to be postponed for weeks. When attacks resumed, especially on October 14th, the results were even more catastrophic. 77 bombers lost or heavily damaged, and over 600 American airmen killed or captured. Major Gasp, commander of TU, JG-11, developed vertical attack tactics that inflicted extreme psychological pressure. 8 fighters diving simultaneously, causing American gunners to fire in panic and frequently miss their targets. The fundamental reason American bombers were so vulnerable was simple physics. No Allied fighter in 1943 had the range to escort bombers deep into German territory. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the main American escort, had a combat radius of only 375 miles with auxiliary fuel. Enough to reach the German border but not beyond. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning could fly farther but suffered mechanical problems at high altitude. Engines would fail, controls would freeze. As a result, B-17s endured the most dangerous stretch of their mission alone over central Germany. German pilots needed only to wait for the golden point, where Allied escorts would turn back, to concentrate their attacks. Oberleutnant Hans Philipp, credited with 206 victories before his death in October 1943, noted, "We tracked bomber streams on radar, calculated exactly where the escorts would retreat, and struck at that moment." American bombers sensed the impending danger. They tightened formations, but limited escort created a deadly equation. Bombers might face 4 hours of continuous combat over enemy territory with only 90 minutes of actual protection. Meanwhile, German pilots could attack, land, refuel, reload, and strike again while bombers struggled home. Some German pilots even flew 3 or 4 sorties in a single raid, multiplying combat effectiveness. The Luftwaffe's confidence seemed boundless. But beneath the surface, Allied engineers and leaders were quietly developing a game-changing weapon, the P-51 Mustang. Initially, the Mustang project was not an American initiative, but a British request in April 1940, when the British Purchasing Commission sought additional P-40s. North American Aviation proposed an entirely new fighter, the NA-73X, capable of its first test flight in just 120 days. A remarkable achievement. The aircraft initially used the Allison V-1710 engine, effective at low altitudes but struggling above 15,000 feet, the very altitude needed for bomber escort. The RAF employed this version for tactical reconnaissance and ground attack, where low-level range mattered more. In April 1942, Rolls-Royce test pilot Ronald Harker realized the Mustang's potential with a 2-stage supercharged Merlin engine, like the newest Spitfire. The first Merlin-powered Mustang flew in October 1942, with extraordinary results. Top speed rose from 390 to 440 mph, ceiling from 31,000 to 42,000 feet, turning the Mustang into a premier bomber escort fighter. What truly made the P-51B revolutionary was not just performance, but range. 3 factors contributed. Laminar flow wing design reduced drag, a lighter fuselage than the P-47, and the ability to carry auxiliary fuel with minimal performance loss. Fuel consumption was just 65 gallons hour versus 100 for the P-47, and with an extra 75-gallon tank, combat radius extended to 850 miles, enough to escort bombers to Berlin and back. The 354th Fighter Group, the Pioneers, received their first P-51Bs in November 1943, deploying immediately to support 8th Air Force strategic bombing missions. From the first sortie, pilots realized the Mustang was like a sports car compared to the Thunderbolt truck. It was fast, agile, and most importantly, could go wherever bombers went. Early escort missions in December 1943 faced little combat, but proved the Mustang perfectly suited high-altitude escort duties. By March 1944, German pilots were shocked to see Mustangs over Berlin, a scenario previously deemed impossible. The German safe zone strategy collapsed completely. At this point, all elements were in place for a complete transformation of aerial warfare: advanced aircraft, new tactics, and American industrial might. From a force that once controlled the skies, the Luftwaffe rapidly fell before determined Mustang pilots, while the P-51 became a symbol of Allied air dominance. In early March 1944, the skies over Germany opened a new chapter in the history of aerial warfare. On March 4th, at 25,000 feet over Brandenburg, Berlin appeared clearly beneath thin clouds. This was the heart of the Reich, the city that Hermann Göring had once declared would never see enemy aircraft. But in the skies above, 660 American heavy bombers flew in perfect formation, surrounded by dozens of P-51 Mustangs bearing U.S. markings, circling protectively like iron arms. It was the first time American pilots escorted bombers all the way to Berlin, and the first time the Luftwaffe faced the reality that there was no longer a safe zone in central German airspace. Colonel Donald Blakesley, commanding the 4th Fighter Group, led 3 P-51B squadrons on a 1,100-mile round trip. They took off from Boxstead, Essex, on a mission to escort 8th Air Force bombers, a mission that just 4 days earlier had been considered impossible for a single-engine aircraft. For German pilots, The sight was almost unbelievable. They had been taught that Allied fighters could not reach Berlin and that they could control the skies over Germany. Now, Mustangs appeared deep in the Reich, fresh and ready to fight, while German fighters were just taking off and already consuming fuel. The air war suddenly turned. The predator became the prey. The battles were fierce. The Luftwaffe deployed over 200 fighters to defend Berlin, but facing the agile, high-altitude advantage of fresh Mustangs, many attacks on bombers were broken up immediately. The 4th Fighter Group alone reported 15 victories, disrupting multiple German approaches. For American pilots, the P-51B was a revelation, fast enough to chase any German fighter, maneuverable enough for dogfights, and with the range to go wherever the bombers went. As Captain Donald Gentile described, the Mustang gave us everything we dreamed of: speed, agility, and unlimited range. We could protect the bombers and then proactively seek and destroy the enemy. Its cockpit design allowed excellent all-around visibility, enabling pilots to identify targets quickly and respond promptly, a key advantage over the P-47 Thunderbolt, which had limited visibility. Aerial combat was not just about numbers or tactics, it was also a tremendous psychological strain. German pilots, who had once considered American bombers easy targets, now faced enemies above them, constantly approaching and attacking. There was no safe place. No airfield, base, or factory was beyond the Mustang's reach. Experienced pilots began to realize they no longer controlled the skies over Germany. In December 1943 and early 1944, when Mustangs first escorted bombers to distant targets like Kiel or Bremen, the Luftwaffe reacted with confusion and panic. Initially, they mistook Mustangs for P-47s, hoping they would retreat once beyond their familiar combat radius. As Mustangs penetrated deeper into Germany, confusion turned into outright panic. German pilots called it a complete strategic shift. What had once been considered safe was now threatened at the heart of the Reich. The impact of the Mustang went far beyond individual dogfights. With the ability to escort bombers to any target, factories, airfields, and weapons production facilities previously protected by geographic distance now lay within Allied reach. Major Gunther Rall, the legendary German pilot, acknowledged that the Mustang not only extended bomber missions but completely altered German air strategy. The Luftwaffe could no longer choose the time or place of engagement. Everything depended on the range and intent of the Mustang. The Luftwaffe attempted to respond with new tactics. Sturmgruppen, using heavily armored FW-190s to punch through bomber formations. Yet these heavy machines became easy targets for the nimble Mustangs. Mass attacks, once effective, were now swiftly and accurately countered by American pilots. The week of February 20–25, 1944, known as Big Week, clearly demonstrated the shift. The 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument to destroy German aircraft production, with Mustangs escorting bombers from start to finish. Over 6 days, the Americans flew 3,300 bomber sorties and 3,673 fighter sorties, losing 226 bombers but destroying over 500 German fighters. More importantly, the Luftwaffe lost irreplaceable experienced pilots, creating a critical gap in both quality and quantity. American tactics evolved. Fighter escorts not only protected bombers, but proactively sought and destroyed the Luftwaffe. Captain John Godfrey described, "We escorted bombers to the target, then dove down to attack airfields, shooting aircraft as they took off or landed. The attrition math now tilted entirely in our favor." The Luftwaffe's losses were staggering. January 1944 saw 1,311 pilots lost, February 121, March 2,115, including many veteran pilots. In contrast, the U.S. could replace losses through a massive pilot training program, producing thousands of pilots monthly. The Mustang was not just an aircraft, it was a weapon system combining technology, tactics, and range, enabling the Allies to establish complete air superiority. Beyond aerial combat, Mustangs conducted ground attacks, destroying railroads, trains, bridges, and fuel depots. A single Mustang could carry 2 500-pound bombs or 10 5-inch rockets alongside its machine guns, making it a versatile weapon. Pilots like Captain Charles "Chuck" Jagger witnessed its wide-ranging capabilities from bomber protection to strategic and even civilian targets, a testament to total war. In response, Germany developed technological countermeasures, the Messerschmitt Me-262 and Me-163 Comet. The Me-262 could reach 540 mph, about 100 mph faster than a Mustang. Yet experienced pilots recognized that limited numbers and fuel shortages prevented the Me-262 from altering the situation. Mustangs exploited weaknesses when German planes were taking off or landing. Lieutenant Urban Drew even shot down 2 Me-262s on the landing approach, proving that range and tactics, not just speed, decided victory. By 1945, the U.S. had produced over 15,000 P-51s, about 8,000 serving in Europe. The 8th Air Force operated over 1,000 Mustangs, facing a Luftwaffe reduced to a few hundred fighters, many unable to fly due to fuel shortages or inexperienced pilots. The kill ratio continued to favor the Americans, proving that the Mustang had completely reversed the aerial war. Surviving German pilots later confirmed that the arrival of the Mustang over Germany marked the moment they realized the war was lost. Not Normandy, not Berlin's fall, but when Mustangs escorted bombers to Berlin, demonstrating superior industrial and tactical power. German pilots, once knights of the sky in 1943, now felt relentlessly hunted, from bomber formations to their own airfields. FW-190 pilot Walter Schuck recalled, "We laughed at the American bombers. 4 months later, we had to hide from the Mustang like losers." The psychological pressure was not just personal. It directly affected combat effectiveness and tactical decisions. Inexperienced pilots with only a few dozen flight hours faced seasoned Mustang pilots, leading to skyrocketing losses. Records show that a German pilot entering combat in November 1944, after 3 sorties, realized, "The Mustang is everywhere. I knew immediately that we had lost not just this battle, but the sky itself." The Mustang's strategic significance extended to destroying German industrial and military infrastructure. By escorting bombers deep into Germany, the Allies began attacking oil plants, bridges, railways, and fuel depots previously safe due to distance. Synthetic oil plants at Leuna, Politz, and Bruck, once protected by geography, became regular targets with full fighter coverage. Production plummeted from 175,000 tons in April 1944 to 10,000 tons in September, crippling the Luftwaffe. Meanwhile, the U.S. maintained a massive pilot training program, producing thousands of new pilots monthly. The Luftwaffe had to deploy inexperienced pilots, many with only 40 to 50 combat hours compared to 300-400 hours for American pilots. This experience gap created a critical imbalance, preventing the Luftwaffe from effectively coordinating forces. The Mustang was more than an aircraft. It was a comprehensive weapons system. Combining long-range, speed, maneuverability, firepower, and bomber escort capability, it enabled American pilots to implement proactive attack tactics, find and destroy the enemy rather than just protect bombers. The new K-14 gun sight, introduced in late 1944, increased accuracy for deflection shooting, allowing pilots to maximize their 50-caliber M2 Brownings with 1,180 rounds, enough for nearly 30 seconds of continuous fire versus 10 seconds for German cannons. Statistics underscore its extraordinary effectiveness. Mustangs destroyed 15,486 enemy aircraft in the air, 4,150 on the ground, 4,131 trains, and flew over 9,254 combat sorties, totaling more than 213,173 flight hours. The air-to-air kill ratio exceeded 11.1, an unprecedented achievement in military aviation history. Yet the Mustang's true impact went beyond numbers. It shattered the Luftwaffe's will to fight, paved the way for invasion campaigns and destruction of German industry, and shortened the war by months or even years. In just 6 months, from October 1943 to March 1944, the Luftwaffe went from dominating German skies and hunting American bombers to fleeing and defending, a swift and tragic reversal. Mustangs did not just destroy aircraft and pilots. They attacked the morale of German aviators. Young pilots trained in fascist ideology and confidence in German technological superiority now witnessed a single-engine American aircraft reach Berlin and defeat all their combat skills. The story of Major Heinz Knoke, a German pilot who survived with 33 victories, summed up the reality. The Mustang killed the Luftwaffe, not the bombers, not the invasion campaigns, but the fighter that could fly to Poland and back. The arrival of the Mustang fundamentally altered the Luftwaffe's strategic structure. In the following months, Germany lacked fuel, pilots, and skills to respond. Tactics such as Sturmgruppen or mass raids became useless against agile Mustangs. As the Allies continued to dominate the skies, the Luftwaffe was forced to deploy inexperienced pilots and limited aircraft, leading to a series of successive defeats with no recovery. Fights in spring and summer 1944, including D-Day, demonstrated the advantage clearly. The Luftwaffe flew only 319 sorties, while the Allies flew over 14,000, fully securing the skies and coastline for the invasion. Mustangs not only protected bombers, but became a ground attack force, destroying trains, ammunition depots, and key military facilities. Pilots like Captain Charles Chuck Jagger witnessed total war, where the line between military strikes and civilian impact was thin but tactically maximized. German technological responses, like the Me-262 and Me-163, though advanced, could not reverse the situation. Mustangs exploited weaknesses during takeoff, landing, or fuel shortages, proving that victory relied not just on speed or technology, but on range, tactics, and industrial production. By 1945, the Mustang had become a symbol of American air power in Europe. The 8th Air Force operated over 1,000, while the Luftwaffe had only a few hundred fighters, many unable to fly due to fuel shortages or inexperienced pilots. The kill ratio continued to favor the Americans, demonstrating that the Mustang had completely reversed the air war's course. Surviving German pilots later confirmed that the Mustang's appearance over German skies was the moment they realized the war was lost. Not Normandy, not Berlin's fall, but when Mustangs escorted bombers to Berlin, demonstrating superior industrial and tactical power. By the end of 1944, the Luftwaffe was on the brink of collapse. The Mustang had cast its shadow over all daylight bombing campaigns, forcing surviving German pilots to confront a harsh reality. The chances of victory were nearly non-existent. Young pilots, many with only 40-50 combat hours, were sent to the front lines to face experienced American pilots flying Mustangs, a fast, agile aircraft with a range that exceeded anything German fighters had ever seen. In October 1944, Mustangs began deep escort missions into Germany's industrial heartlands, not only protecting bombers, but also attacking military facilities, fuel depots, and rail lines, inflicting devastating damage on Germany's war-sustaining capabilities. One American pilot noted, "We weren't just escorting bombers. We were hunting anything that moved on the ground or in the air." The Mustang became a total war machine, combining air superiority, ground attack, and strategic impact. The tactical effectiveness of the Mustang was evident during Big Week, February 20-25, 1944, when the 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument targeting German aircraft production. With Mustangs escorting them, the Allies flew 300 bomber sorties and 3,673 fighter sorties, destroying over 500 Luftwaffe aircraft and eliminating thousands of experienced German pilots, while losing only 226 bombers. Mustangs did more than protect bombers. They actively hunted the enemy, fundamentally reversing the math of air warfare. the Luftwaffe shifted from predator to prey. Mustang dominance was also clear on D-Day, June 6, 1944. As Allied forces landed on the Normandy beaches, the Luftwaffe was nearly impotent, flying only 319 sorties compared to over 14,000 by the Allies. Only 2 German aircraft appeared over the beaches, a mission German pilots themselves called suicide disguised as duty. Mustangs not only shielded the landing forces, but established complete air superiority, proving the Allies' uncontested control of the skies. During this period, the Mustang's industrial impact was equally significant. By escorting bombers deep into Germany, the Allies began attacking oil plants, railways, and military production centers previously out of reach. Oil output plummeted from 175,000 tons in April 1944 to 30,000 tons in July and just 10,000 tons in September. Without fuel, the Luftwaffe could not maintain fighter squadrons or train new pilots. Advanced aircraft, like the Me-262 and Me-163, sat idle, while Mustangs patrolled the skies freely. The disparity in pilot skill and numbers became critical. American pilots had 300 to 400 combat hours, while new German pilots entering the front lines had only 40 to 50 hours. The Mustang's combination of speed, agility, long range, and superior firepower allowed American pilots to hunt German aviators even during takeoff or landing. On several occasions, Mustangs downed Me-262s during takeoff or landing, exploiting jet engine weaknesses while managing throttle and fuel. By early 1945, the imbalance was nearly absolute. The U.S. had produced over 15,000 Mustangs, around 8,000 serving in Europe. The 8th Air Force operated over 1,000 Mustangs, while the Luftwaffe had only a few hundred operational fighters, many grounded due to fuel shortages, with remaining pilots young and inexperienced. The Mustang's kill ratio reached 10 victories per loss, an unprecedented record. Surviving German pilots recalled that the moment they saw Mustangs escorting bombers to Berlin was when they realized the war was lost. Not Normandy, not Berlin's fall, but the appearance of Mustangs where they had never imagined escorting bombers to the Reich's center, shattering every belief in German technological and tactical superiority. The Mustang did not just dominate the skies, it destroyed the Luftwaffe's fighting spirit and morale. Pilots who had been confident in 1943 now faced the harsh reality of fuel shortages, lack of skill, and opponents with superior range, speed, and firepower. Previously effective mass attack tactics, Sturmgruppen, and traditional strike formations became useless against agile Mustangs. The psychological impact was profound. German pilots confronted a cognitive paradox. They had been trained to believe in superior German technology and weak American forces. The Mustang proved that Allied industry, innovation, and cooperation could surpass Germany's technological monopoly. Many German pilots after the war acknowledged their respect for the Americans, changed their perspective on the enemy, and recognized that their beliefs in technical and racial superiority were completely wrong. The Mustang's final air battles in 1945 were utterly dominant over the Luftwaffe. German loss rates were high, pilot skills declined, and available aircraft dwindled rapidly. Mustangs continued to escort bombers, destroy fuel depots, trains, and military facilities, creating a total air war storm, directly contributing to Germany's complete defeat. When the war ended, the Mustang was recognized as a decisive weapon in the European air war, a symbol of American industrial strength, technical innovation, and Allied coordination. It completely redefined the concept of a single-engine fighter, demonstrating that such an aircraft could serve as a strategic weapon, capable of projecting power hundreds of miles from its base. By the end of hostilities in Europe in May 1945, the Mustang had left an indelible mark on the history of military aviation. Not only for its sheer number of victories and effectiveness in bomber escort, but also for fundamentally reshaping the perception of air warfare and the role of single-engine fighters. Before the Mustang, fighters were often regarded as close-range defensive weapons meant only to protect nearby targets. The Mustang proved that a fighter could become a strategic weapon, escorting bombers across continents, striking deep into enemy territory, and exercising control over entire airspaces. The combination of an American airframe with the British Merlin engine represented an unprecedented model of international collaboration, ushering in a new era for aircraft development. American engineers learned how to integrate optimal foreign technology while leveraging industrial production to produce vast numbers of high-quality fighters within months. This set the foundation for post-war military technology cooperation, influencing NATO strategies and modern fighter development programs. American pilots, rigorously trained and equipped with Mustangs, became an elite force not only in air combat, but also in ground attacks, destroying infrastructure, trains, and fuel depots. The Mustang demonstrated that combat capability and long-range performance were decisive factors in modern industrial warfare, where production and logistics were as critical as individual skill. The coordination between bombers and their fighter escorts created a dual strategic effect, striking key targets while neutralizing enemy defenses, altering the balance of power in the skies. For the Germans, the Mustang became a constant nightmare. Luftwaffe pilots who had been confident in 1943 were forced to accept the harsh reality that all previous advantages were gone. American aircraft outnumbered them, pilot skill exceeded theirs, and the Mustang could strike anywhere in the Reich without needing to refuel or return to base. This was a profound psychological shock, compelling many German pilots to redefine their concepts of combat, courage, and survival tactics. Lessons from the Mustang extended beyond the war. The concept of the fighter as a strategic weapon was applied in the Korean War with the F-86 Sabre, during the Cold War with long-range interceptors, and continues to influence modern aircraft design with global deployment and aerial refueling capabilities. The Mustang also demonstrated that technical innovation, international collaboration, and industrial production could decisively change the course of war, a crucial lesson for any modern nation. On a human level, the Mustang altered perceptions and relationships between former enemies. Many Luftwaffe pilots after the war expressed admiration for the Americans, realizing that pre-war media and propaganda had underestimated Allied industrial and human capacity. Stories of German pilots meeting American pilots post-war, sharing experiences, illustrate a profound shift in personal perspectives and respect for the adversary. The Mustang was not just a weapon, but a bridge between opposing civilizations, fostering mutual respect grounded in skill, innovation, and technology. Final statistics underscore the Mustang's overwhelming power: 15,486 units produced, 4,150 enemy aircraft destroyed in the air, 4,131 on the ground, 9,154 combat sorties flown, and a kill-to-loss ratio exceeding 11.1, an unprecedented record in the history of aerial warfare. Yet the Mustang's true impact was not measured in numbers alone, but in the complete collapse of the Luftwaffe, the destruction of their confidence, and the Allies' ability to penetrate deep into German territory with minimal resistance. The Mustang stands as a testament to the strength of democratic industry, where production capability, pilot training, and technical innovation outweighed any enemy strategy or individual heroism. It demonstrated that in modern warfare, victory depended not only on courage, but on the ability to produce superior weapons, train effective pilots, and coordinate allies intelligently. In retrospect, the Mustang remains a legendary fighter aircraft, a symbol of American air dominance in World War II, with influence far beyond tactical victories. It shattered the myth of German technological superiority, facilitated Allied strategic success, and reshaped the world's understanding of industrial power in warfare. Personal stories from both sides illustrate the profound and comprehensive impact of the Mustang. American pilots recalled the feeling of flying the P-51 for the first time, its lightness, exceptional speed, and maneuverability, like a sports car in the sky. gave them the confidence that no limits existed over German airspace. On the German side, pilots who had once confidently dominated the skies in FW-190s or Bf-109s now faced a harsh reality. Their opponents not only had superior machines, but were energized by long-range capability-abundant fuel and outstandingly trained pilots. A Luftwaffe pilot who participated in the 1943 raids remembered, "We laughed at unescorted B-17s, but when the Mustangs arrived, the nightmare began. There was nowhere safe, no moment to breathe. We became the prey, and we knew it immediately." Testimonies like this reflect the rapid collapse of German pilot morale. By March 1944, when Mustangs escorted bombers all the way to Berlin, most German pilots realized that all previous advantages were gone, and control of the skies could not be regained. For the Americans, Mustangs did more than protect bombers. They actively sought out and destroyed German squadrons, targeting fuel depots, rail lines, and aircraft production facilities. This capability turned American pilots into dynamic strategic tools, attacking targets both in the air and on the ground. From D-Day to campaigns across Germany and Poland, the Mustang allowed the Allies to maintain constant pressure, breaking the Luftwaffe's ability to recover. A key aspect was the evolution of tactics. American pilots were instructed not only to escort bombers, but to attack proactively, exploiting every opportunity to destroy German forces. As a result, the Luftwaffe gradually lost experienced pilots, leaving those remaining to face highly skilled American pilots in optimized aircraft, reducing their effective combat hours almost to zero. With the Mustang's arrival, the shift in the balance of power became unmistakable. Over 15,000 Mustangs were produced, with around 8,000 serving in Europe. The 11-to-1 kill-to-loss ratio left the Luftwaffe virtually powerless to control the skies. German pilots, once proud of their individual skill and tactical advantages, were forced to learn survival in an environment where every action was dominated by the Mustang. Surviving witnesses recounted the frustration and despair of seeing Mustang squadrons appear overhead. They didn't just protect bombers. They hunted German pilots even during takeoff or landing. This was a strategic revolution. The Mustang was not merely a fighter aircraft, but a tool of psychological domination, reshaping German perceptions of aerial warfare. Even when the Luftwaffe deployed advanced jets like the Me-262 or Me-163, the Mustang maintained its advantage through overwhelming numbers, coordinated tactics, and the skill of American pilots. Jets were faster but fuel-hungry, difficult to operate, and vulnerable during takeoff or landing, circumstances that Mustangs exploited to retain aerial superiority. Strategically, the Mustang transformed the course of the war. Deep strikes into Germany became feasible, particularly against fuel, weapon production, and rail infrastructure. This destruction not only reduced Luftwaffe combat capability, but also paralyzed the German logistical and industrial system. In 1944, fuel production fell from 175,000 tons to just 10,000 tons by year's end. German pilots lacked fuel, experience, and effective tactics, resulting in total collapse. The final stories of the Mustang teach the power of combining industry, technology, and strategy. The Mustang demonstrated that a well-designed, mass-produced weapon could shift the course of a war in months. Pilots who had been confident in 1943, mocking American bombers, lost their assurance, faced constant danger, and many did not survive to see the war's end. Post-war encounters between American and German pilots reinforced the Mustang's significance. German pilots acknowledged that the Mustang not only ended their air superiority, but also changed their understanding of industrial capacity, tactics, and the limits of individual skill. They realized that any predictions based on subjective confidence or tactical pride were meaningless against an opponent with superior technology and production capability. The P-51 Mustang became a symbol of American industrial and technological power, proving that determination, innovation, and international collaboration could change history. It ended Luftwaffe dominance and shattered the myth of German technological superiority, demonstrating that victory in modern warfare depends on production, training, and continuous innovation. From October 1943 to May 1945, the Luftwaffe experienced one of the fastest and most complete collapses in military history. In less than 2 years, pilots who had been the sky predators became the prey, witnessing their airspace completely dominated by Mustangs. The lessons of the Mustang remain: never underestimate the enemy, continually innovate, leverage industrial strength, and recognize that an exceptional weapon can alter the entire course of a war. Ultimately, the Mustang was more than a tactical or aerial victory. It became a legend of the perfect combination of technology, industry, and strategy. It symbolized the power of a creative, dynamic, democratic society where science and industry were harnessed to achieve victory in global conflict. The Mustang rewrote history, turning the laughter of German pilots in 1943 into total silence just months later, and remains an immortal symbol of modern warfare, innovative spirit, and American industrial strength.